All right, let's do a video. It's been a while, of course. I warned you that I would be on here a whole lot. I am working on my second novel, coming along nicely. I'm really enjoying the process of writing. I need to wrap it up pretty quickly, though, because it's going to become a documentary rather than a work of fiction if I'm not careful. It's about the rise of AI and the fall of civilization and how that's brought about. And it works. It works nicely with my channel. The topics I cover here are also covered in that novel. Hoping for a Netflix deal or something like that. So it's very dramatic, and it would be fun to see it turned into a series or a movie, and we'll see what happens. Yes, the topic today. What is the topic today? We have a few years left. Most people have noticed that we've been having globally a series now, going back really to March, early in the year. We've been having a series of heat waves. We have an ongoing marine heat wave, which almost nobody is aware of. As I'm looking out my window right here, we're having monsoon weather. Monsoons. I remember monsoons from when I lived in Bangkok as a kid. And the monsoons would come in and they'd bring a lot of moisture, and they happened on hot days because that's what monsoons are. They're not weather like the Europeans and the English and the Americans and Canadians are used to. The monsoons are not weather. They're continental phenomena where the continental interior gets so hot that it can actually create weather. There's so much heat that it can create its own weather, local weather, and it's fairly regional. These storms are fairly regional, and they always involve thunderstorms, lightning, occasionally dry lightning, but often lightning with torrential rain. So that's monsoon weather. And they when I was living in Bangkok, the afternoon you get your monsoon, and it would rain like a son of a gun during the season, every day. During the season, you'd get your monsoon weather. They'd come in because they're not weather. It's atmospheric patterns that repeat every day, and that's different. And people who live in the northern hemisphere, especially, well above the subtropics, they're not accustomed to monsoon weather. Monsoon is a phenomenon. It's not weather. It defines these places. It defines the planting season. It defines where you can go certain times of the year and where you can't. It defines when it's safe to be on the roads and when it's not, and when you're going to have to use a boat instead of a truck or things like that. That's what the monsoons are about. They define your life when they happen and even when they don't. So right now, we have a massive marine heat wave across the entire planet. And we also have an impending El Nino that's going to be a real, what do you want to call it? Godzilla, right? It's going to be a monster. It's ramping up now, so we can already expect to see some effects from it. But it's just going to dominate the year 2026 and possibly even into 2027. We may see impacts from El Nino into 2027 that just defy comprehension. I mean, seriously. We may have, it's all guesstimates, right? But this is speculative science. We can speculate a little bit from science. We may have so warm a winter in the United States, the lower 48, that there is no snowfall possible in 2027. The winter, we just had a record warm winter. We had the warmest March in U.S. history. For much of the country, like well over half the country, had the warmest March, an entire month. And we could easily have the warmest winter. So watch out for 2027. The El Nino is going to peak. It warms and then it peaks and then it starts to decrease again on the other side of that. I mean, normally we kind of don't know what this one's going to do because it's so far off the map. We kind of don't know. But it's supposed to peak around November, and that's typically what happens with these things. They peak at the end of the year, November, December. That's when it was discovered. Climatologists, meteorologists discovered this phenomenon because it always seemed to happen at the same time. So they became interested in it and they studied it and they said, oh, this is a whole thing. This is the thing. This is the Earth doing its thing. And then they started putting names on things, which is supposed to make it more comprehensible. But anyway, you're in the middle of it now. So whether you comprehend it or not, frankly, is immaterial. Here we go. And that's what this video is about. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Where do we go from here? So people are beginning to notice that the Earth seems to be changing. Do I have to say anything more? I don't think I do. And people will say, oh, well, okay, maybe it seems a little different, but we've had hot days before. We've had hot years before. Yeah, okay, fine, you did. We've had rain before. Yeah, true. We've had floods before. Yeah, you probably did. We've had tornado outbreaks before. I'm sure you did. And, we've had Category 5 typhoons heading across the Pacific Ocean, destroying island nations and entire countries. Yeah, we've had that before. Think whatever you like. That's your normalcy bias. But people who do pay attention to this and who try to work outside their normalcy bias and try to do sciencey stuff, okay, looking at data, not, oh, well, I feel like this is okay, not vibing. We're not vibing our science here, okay? Even if we speculate, it's not vibes. Now, we're speculating from data or past expectations, lining up in a certain way, and then we expect something in the future as a result. So we're not really vibing, although a certain amount of science is always speculative, right? We can't know. We can't really know. That's sort of the work. And people say, oh, well, that's a problem then if you just can't know anything. Well, no, it's not as bad as that, okay? We just can't know the truth. We can try to understand what's happening to us. And what's happening to you, go read the paper. If you're not reading the paper, I'll just tell you what's happening to you is you've run out of time. How can I say that? Because I know what's happening, and I'm not the only one. You'll hear this when these pundits start to talk about this. You'll hear them say things like, "Yeah, this summer is really hot, and this is really scaring people, and this is causing a lot of damage and costing a lot of lives, which is also expensive, by the way." But this is nothing. You've seen nothing yet. We've got worse coming later this summer. This year, it's already baked into the cake. The El Nino won't even peak until November, December. So the rest of the summer is just more. It's more and more and more and more and more. And we don't even know what more is going to do to us because we've never had this much. This is off the charts. This is record breaking. What is some of the uncharted El Nino is what I see people calling this, historic El Nino, and what they're basically saying is we have no idea what this is going to do to us. It's going to be bad. Okay, we know that it's going to be really bad, but we don't know what it's going to do to us. You just can't know. There's a big difference in how the Earth behaves when you inject a small amount of extra energy versus a lot. And sometimes a small amount will be like a little speed bump, and you'll go over and you say, oh, well, that was a thing. But now we're on the other side, so that's fine. But sometimes the speed bump will be so big and so unexpected that when you hit it, you say, oh, what's this? And it tears the undercarriage out of your car. It tears the bumper off, destroys the engine. Because it's a speed bump. Yeah, sure, you've been over speed bumps before, but it's a big one. Okay, and when you hit that big speed bump, it's going to tear the undercarriage out of your car. So that's kind of the situation we're in. This is going to be so big that when civilization rolls over this at speed, because that's how we do things, and we don't slow down. We don't take our time. We don't back up a little bit and say, oh, wait. Everybody, stop. Hold on. Here's a big speed bump. We don't do that. We just go through at speed. And if this time last year, we were going 80 miles an hour down this road, well, then today we're going to go 80 miles an hour down this road. And someone says, yeah, there's a speed bump ahead called El Nino. You're like, yeah, whatever. 80 miles an hour, I got my car, I got my big truck, whatever. And you're going, and then the speed bump is actually more like a wall. Right? It's more like a wall. It's not this little thing that you can kind of go over and laugh. It's this big thing. And if you hit it without backing up a little bit, saying, hold it, slow down, Sparky, is back up. What the hell is this? Okay, if you don't do that, which we're not doing that, then you hit it. And then we see what happens. So civilization is going to hit this El Nino, or vice versa, however you want to see it. And we'll find out. We're going to find out. Now, I'm not here to talk about El Nino. Lots of people are going to talk about El Nino. They'll define El Nino and the Nino 3.4 region and what's a strong El Nino and what's a very strong El Nino. And the Godzilla El Nino is just a made-up term, and there is no meteorological term like that. And people are just being fearmongers. People are dramatizing and all this kind of stuff. And people will talk to you about El Nino until they're blue in the face. That's fine. Let them go do that. I'm here to talk about what comes after. One of these times, there's not going to be an after. One of these times, we're going to hit this thing. Whether it's that thing or something related to it or something completely new, we're going to hit it at speed because we don't know how to slow down. We don't know how to be cautious. We don't know how to take a step back and say, hold on, let's put the brakes on, let's slow down, let's make changes, let's prepare for this, and people don't know how to do that. And no one's asking them to do that. So they're not going to do that. So we're going to hit it at speed, which is how we do everything. Recklessly, without any forethought or any pre-planning or nothing. At least when a hurricane comes and it's going to hit Florida, people rush down to the Lowe's and the Home Depot and they buy all the plywood and all the lumber and all the nails, and they come rushing back and they board up their windows, and they board up their doors, and they pile the sandbags on the doors, and they do all this stuff, okay? So they will, but they're not really slowing down. They're just diverting their lives for a day. Just a day. Hurricane's going to come through. It's going to be here for 6 hours, maybe 10, right? And, they pass through fairly quickly, and someone will get a lot of it. Maybe some county will be flooded, and somebody's coastal residential area will be washed out to sea, and all their cars and their cattle and everything washed out to sea. But that's not going to be me because I put plywood on my windows and everything, and I'm going to be good. Okay, so we just 6 hours, right? 6-8 hours, 10 hours of storm, and then it's gone, and then we have a big mess to clean up and clean it up. And it's done. Okay, but that's not what we're running into right now. These heat waves last weeks at a time, and they keep coming. In Europe, they name their storms. Here in the U.S., we name hurricanes, and in Asia, they name typhoons using a different naming. But in Europe, they name not only hurricanes, but also just storms, powerful storms that come off the Atlantic. I heard something in the news a couple of days ago. They're now debating whether they should name heat waves. And I think the reason they want to do that is so that when there's a terrible heat wave, they can talk about it. They can say, well, that heat wave that happened a month ago or last year this time, heat wave Bob the heat wave. The one coming up now is compared to Bob in this way. It will last as long, but it won't be as hot as Bob. Or it will be as hot as Bob, but it'll last a week longer. And then people can talk about Bob because it has a name. There was a heat wave named Bob. And we know what Bob was about. If you remind me there was a heat wave named Bob, I can think about, Bob, which one was that? Oh, yeah, I remember Bob. Yeah, I went to the beach during Bob. I rented a cottage down on the beach. I flew to Norway to get out of the way of Bob, and or I didn't, and I suffered, and my dog died, because of Bob, and there was crazy fights at the store for the last bottled water because of Bob. And so, yeah, I remember Bob. So something like that's coming back. It's a year later, and we're still talking about Bob and something. So they're going to start naming their heat waves so they can talk about them and compare, the one last month or the one this time last year and compare them because they're taking this seriously. Now, people say, oh, that's fear-mongering. That's just making it worse than it is. I don't think it is. In fact, if anything, by naming hurricanes, storms, and heat waves, you kind of humanize them a little bit. They're maybe even a little less scary than if they're just some phenomenon of nature that just swoops down on you like a demon from the fiery pits. And just ravages your world. Well, if it has a name, then it kind of has a personality, right? A face. And you can maybe feel a little better about it. So I don't know why they're going to start naming their heat waves, but that's the talk now in Europe. They're going to start naming their heat waves. Hydrate or die. So these heat waves are coming. They're rolling in one after the other. Now, the thing that kind of drives me nuts about this is that they'll say, oh, well, there's a heat dome. Oh, well, there's a omega blocker. And they do all this kind of stuff. This is the meteorologists who do this. And they're trying to kind of normalize even these horrendous events that are actually not weather. These heat waves we're getting right now are climate. They are climate change. They are global heating. And you can talk about them as if they're weather. Oh, this heat wave, that heat wave, it's going to last a few days. It's going to get this hot, and night times. You can try to normalize it like it's a normal thing, but it's not. It's all global heating. It's all 100% of it global heating. And if you don't want to believe that, that's fine. I don't really care what you believe. But I'm trying to educate you because I want you to understand this is not going away. And because it's global heating, and because global heating always gets worse, then these heat waves, whatever you name them, whatever phenomenon you blame them on, omega blockers, ridges, locking in, heat domes, right? Bob, whatever you want to call them, it's all of it 100% global heating. And because it is, because there's no stopping global heating, and because global heating continues and it gets worse and it gets worse every year, and every year we have even worse outcomes than we did the prior years. Because of that, there's no good story here. It's just bad. And I heard people in Europe, you won't hear this in America because, well, you just won't. In Europe, they're saying to people, look, if you think this is bad, these summers, these months in the summer of 2026, these will be thought of later as cool. These will be survivable. These will be considered, hot, but not inhumane, not murderously hot. We'll think of 2026 fondly. Where were you in 2026? Oh yeah, I could still go to the beach. My grandparents hadn't died in the heat. I've spent 2 weeks in the hospital from heat exhaustion this year alone, but in 2026, I didn't even go to the emergency room. We'll think of 2026 fondly. We'll think of the El Nino of 2026 as just a warning. And in a few years, this situation is going to be unlivable. Unlivable. People already say, oh, it's so hot here, it's unlivable. Yeah, but you didn't die, so it was livable. But in the future, shortly, a few years, these events, whether you name them, or whether they're a heat dome, or whether they're an omega blocker, or whatever, however you want to explain them, these things will be unlivable. And we will be facing mass fatality events. Mass fatality events. What's a mass fatality event? Well, you're going to find out. But let me prepare you with do some level setting, okay? Let's do some level setting on what is a mass fatality event. They just lost in the last heat wave, maybe it was the last two, because they're stacking up now, okay? You can't keep track anymore. That's why they have to name them, because they're stacking up. So I think the last two heat waves in, I don't know if it was just France or France and surrounding countries in Europe, they lost 10,000 people. There was a big heat wave, I want to say 2011, but it may have been 2003. It was fairly recently, where they lost something like 14,000 people in France to a heat wave. Now, mostly elders, mostly people with a chronic condition like diabetes and things like that. Your body, if your body is already damaged with obesity or kidney disease or liver disease or something else, where you're already kind of struggling on a daily basis and needing occasional medical support, and then a big heat wave comes, it can just pitch you right over and you're done. If you're not already in the hospital when the heat hits, then 6 hours later you're dead and you never get to go to the hospital. And maybe they could have helped you, and maybe they couldn't, but whatever. It didn't happen, and pre-existing condition, chronic illness, whatever, and age, which is kind of a chronic illness, and people died by the tens of thousands. Okay, that's a mass fatality event, especially if it takes place over a few days, like a week, right? Then that leaves a mark. They were the morgues in Paris, London? I think it was Paris. Were so full that the morticians were turning the bodies away. They couldn't handle them anymore. And what does a mortician do? Well, they prepare the body for burial, and they have, they generate the death certificate and whatever else they have to do. It's work, it's paperwork, and then someone has to come collect the body and have to schedule a burial. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of bureaucracy. Well, when you've got 40 people a day coming in, your tiny little mortician staff, and maybe you've got 8, burial houses in the greater Paris area. You've got 8 of them, and they're each getting 40, 50, or 100 people a day, every day, right? Then you become overwhelmed. And what do? Well, when we had COVID and hospitals were overwhelmed with dead people, okay, not sick people, overwhelmed with dead people, they put them in freezer cars, big trailers, and these are the same thing that are used to deliver meat from the meat packing houses to whatever butcher shops and markets and places like that. So they have these big freezer trailers, and normally they're full of pork and beef and chicken, and it's all been butchered and it's all ready to go on the shelves, but they put bodies in them instead, and they froze them. And then when this is all COVID, and then when things started to mellow out, then they started taking the bodies out and doing what they had to do with the bodies. That type of mass fatality event where you don't know what to do with the bodies. That's what's coming for us. Probably this summer, because you haven't seen anything yet. Oh, sweetie, let me tell you, you have seen exactly nothing. Nothing you've seen so far is going to prepare you for August, September, November, December, maybe. It is going to be a shit show. And that's just 2026 into 2027. This is going to get worse every year. Maybe some year, maybe 2028 will be a little better. Maybe it'll spill over into 2028, but then maybe 2029 will be a little better. But between now and 2031, 5 years, okay, you are going to live through a daily nightmare. A daily nightmare. People who don't have air conditioning in many places will simply perish. They'll just perish. They'll die. People who live alone without someone to look after them and make sure that they're drinking enough water and staying cool and, showering off in cold water, whatever they have to do, will die alone. Children will die if their parents don't know how to keep them alive, how to keep them cool, because children overheat, especially infants, really, really small children will overheat, and the elders will overheat. Again, this is just metabolism, just their physiology can't handle the heat, and they overheat, and their organs cook internally and they die. Organs cook and cease to function. If your organs get cooked, it's like they're removed. If your liver cooks, it's not there anymore. If your kidneys get cooked, they're not there. They're not working for you. And without your internal organs, wow, okay, good luck. I mean, you don't have a story without your internal organs functioning correctly. And, of course, people also can die from dehydration. They can just die from not having enough water. And the problem with dehydration is that once you start to dehydrate, you start getting dizzy. And especially if you're old. If you're old and you're not drinking water because you just are old, you forgot, right? You just got confused and you stopped drinking water. And there was no one there to say, hey, drink this water. Okay, then you forget to drink water and you just get dizzy and you forget why you're dizzy. You forget there's a heat wave. And you sit down and you fan yourself with your hand and then you stop doing that and then you're dead. And that's just how it is. And let's face it, there's a lot of old people living alone. Or there's a lot of old people who are living in households where the adults who might be taking care of them, their own children, for example, are away at work during the day. And when they come back, the air conditioning wasn't turned on. They didn't have money to run the air conditioning. Or just as bad, and this is the second shoe to drop, the power failed. The power failed. So the air conditioning was there. You turned it on. You checked on mom. You checked on dad. You make sure they had a jug of water, and then unknown to you, the power failed. How would you possibly know that? You're at work, you get off work at 5, 6 hours, it's hot and you got chores to do and you go and grab groceries and you come back and you go in the house and it's 98 degrees inside the house. And click, the lights don't work. And the power's been off for 6 hours. And then you're thinking, oh, I gotta check on mom, I gotta check on dad. And you go there and they're dead. So they don't have to even be alone. They can just be just a statistic of the way we run our lives. And then, of course, there's always a story. People leaving their kids in their car. I mean, do I have to even have any sympathy for those people? You just won the Darwin Award. You killed your children by leaving them in the car on a hot day. Well, it's only going to be a minute. Yeah, and then you were talking to Beth, and then you were talking to Beverly, and then you were talking to Christy, and then you had a laugh, and you decided to go in and get a beer, and you came out and you said, oh my God, I forgot about my children. And they're dead, and you're going to prison now. That shit's going to happen all the time. I mean, people are going to get caught so unawares that all the normal bullshit that they do, that they can maybe generally get away with, right? Frequently get away with this. Go to work in the morning, leave mom in her room with the air conditioner running, and it's kind of not too hot, and you say, okay, mom, just sit right here next to the air conditioner. Here's some water, drink the water, and then you come back at the end of the day, and you're the first one home, and it turns out the power was off for 6 hours, and mom's dead. That's how it's going to be, people. That's how it's going to be. And that's how you get a mass fatality event. Because these kind of situations, elders living at home, elders living alone, children being left in cars, children, being left home while mom goes out to get a pack of cigarettes, children being left home, that's how it's going to be. And we're going to have mass fatality events. And I don't mean 14,000 people killed in a week. A lowball mass fatality event will be 200,000 people killed in a week. That's lowballing it. And that would be probably France. They're going to have a mass fatality event where 200,000 people die in a week. This summer, is my guess. Here in the U.S., where we don't like to talk about these things, we'll probably never even know. It'll be considered domestic terrorism. This will be happening at the state level. They will pass laws that make it domestic terrorism to report on mass fatality events. You can't do it. They won't let you. I mean, this is the story in like China and North Korea. You just can't talk about these things. Russia, you can't talk about these things. It's getting that way here in the U.S. You just can't talk about these things because it's too embarrassing to the administration. It's too embarrassing to have, a country where there is so little societal cohesion that we can't save people from the heat and they die in the heat. And I could also talk about floods. I could talk about tornadoes, but I don't even have to. I don't even have to talk about those things. It's the heat, folks. It's the heat. Yeah, flooding is very visual, right? All this brown water in the cars, floating in the water, and people trapped on their roofs, save me! And they got SOS spelled out on their roof in wet towels, right? SOS, save us, we're here. Yeah, that's all very dramatic, and CNN and Fox News, and it's all very dramatic, and lots of memes and YouTube shorts and all this kind of stuff, and it's all very dramatic. Yeah, maybe some people die in those things, but your mass fatality events are going to be heat. And the heat brings something that I've already alluded to, and I might as well mention this. The heat brings power failure, like everywhere. Was just hearing this morning that a big electricity provider in the Northeast, I want to call it PJM, but I may be wrong. I'm not from there, so I don't really know. Came within a gnat's eyebrow of going down because of demand, because of the heat. And where does the demand come from? Well, because people are now buying air conditioners, right? It's been hot, so everyone rushes out to Lowe's, and you'll find all these, stories online and in the newspaper. Air conditioners selling out left, right, and center. Can't get an air conditioner for love nor money. People selling their old air conditioner right out of their window in their house for $1,000. It's 10 years old. They can still get $1,000 for an old air conditioner that they're not using. And horror stories, right? And if you go to the big box shop and you're trying to get a fan or air conditioner, they're out. Well, what do you think happens with all those? They go into the houses and they get plugged in. And nothing happens. Just plugging it in doesn't make anything happen. We're all good, right? We're good. I just plugged in my AC. I tested it. Click. Oh, it runs. That's cool air. Okay, turn it off. Nothing happened. And then 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon rolls around, and everybody's home, and they're so hot. Oh, I have an air conditioner. They all go and they turn their air conditioner on. And then, the power levels start to collapse, and the demand is going up, and they're trying to buy power from all over the continent. They're buying it from the Canadians. Oops. Canadians aren't going to sell us power because we suck. So we can't buy from the Canadians anymore. We used to be able to do that. Now we can't. So, and the power levels are starting to collapse. And finally, somebody just gets home. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 5:30 in the afternoon. It's so hot in here. And they turn on their air conditioner and all the power goes out. For 6, 8, 10 states. Not one air conditioner. Click. Oh, no. What did I just do? Yeah, you just brought down the regional grid is what you just did. Not your fault. But, that's how it's going to be. Now you're really screwed because everybody's air conditioner goes down. And because it's a regional outage, it's going to take the regional power companies through coordination. They're all on the phone talking to each other left and right and yelling across the room and talking on the phone. It's going to take these guys and gals 48 hours, 72 hours to reboot the grid. And what happens during that time? Well, your air conditioner isn't working. Click, 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 click. I just bought this stupid thing. Click, click, click. And also your refrigerator's not working. And if you're living in an apartment on the 5th or 6th floor, you don't have water because there's a pump in the basement, a high pressure pump that actually pumps the water to the higher floors. And so If you're living in a single family home and you're here at ground level, then the pressure that's in the town water is enough to give you pressure at the tap. But if you're living in an apartment and you're above about the 4th floor, if you're above that, then the pressure in the pipes isn't enough. They have to have a pump. Well, guess what? That pump runs on electricity. Well, not anymore. It doesn't, because there isn't any. So not only do you not have air conditioning, you don't have water. Hydrate or die. Now, you can go to the market and buy bottled water. You may even have bottled water in the refrigerator, and that's fine. So you got enough for, what, 8 hours? 10 hours? But it's fine, because the Red Cross will open and the church will open and they'll have water supply, and you'll go down there with your bottle, you'll fill your big bottle up and you'll go back to your apartment, and okay, and maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's a line of 800 people at the church wanting to fill up their water bottles, and it's hot and there's no AC and there's no fans because there's no electricity. And so now we got 800 people, the line goes around the block like this, and people are standing in the sun and they have no water because that's why they're there. And then you have a mass fatality event. Because you do. And that's where we're just not ready for this. And by not being ready, I mean, not only are you not ready for this as an individual, because you've never had this happen to you before, we're not ready for this as nations or as a global civilization. We're not ready for this. We're just not. And how will we adapt? How will we get through this? How are people going to act? Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? We are going to find out. Yes, we will. We will find out. And we'll learn something about where the vulnerabilities are, like in the grid, or people not having air conditioning, even if they have electricity, or maybe everyone goes out and buys themselves an AC unit to fit in the window, and then there's too much draw on the power grid, and the power grid goes out. And so there's all these primary and secondary effects of heat. The primary effect, of course, is it just gets hot and people's internal organs cook and they die. And then the secondary effects are things like, well, some people have air conditioning, and then the power goes out. That's a secondary effect. And then when the power goes out, then there may not be water delivery to everybody, depending on their living arrangements, and that's another effect. And so you get these cascading effects that no one ever thought about. Oh, and then because the power failed, of course, the food at the grocery store goes to bad. It starts to go bad at the same time that the food in your own refrigerator goes bad. And how much food do you even have in there? Maybe you've got enough food on the shelves that you could, cook a meal and eat something. You can live a lot longer without food than you can without water. Like weeks. You can live without food for a week. Most people, of course, people with prior conditions exist, diabetes or whatever. It's a little harder for them. Old people, children living without food is a bad scene. But you only live 3 days without water. And what are you going to do? Well, there's lots of people can tell you what to do. There's lots of preppers. There's lots of people who are in emergency management. Hopefully your region, your state, your country, your county, your city, whatever, when there's a bad heat wave coming and they're a little bit nervous about the electrical grid, and they're worried that, we barely got through the last one. Let's not forget that was a close call. This one's going to be a little worse. It's going to be a couple days longer. It's going to be a little bit hotter. We think there's even more air conditioning been plugged in recently. Since the last heat wave, people rushed out and bought air conditioners. Now we think that there's going to be a lot more power draw for this coming heat wave, and so they can start getting nervous. And then they might tell you, here's how to survive a heat wave. And some communities will have better preparation than others. Some communities won't have any preparation whatsoever. Others will have a lot. They'll say the local stadium, which is completely enclosed, our local stadium, we have generators, and we're going to run the air conditioning to cool it off ahead of time. And if you're getting too hot and you don't have AC or you don't have power, come down here to the stadium, come down here to the high school, basketball court, come down here to the public library, come down to the civic hall, city hall, and we have cooling centers, we have water. We have a place where you can charge your cell phone and contact your family members if you need to. And, that's preparation, right? And some communities will do that. And some communities will just be flat out in denial. This ain't happening. No. They're telling us this is going to be a bad deal. What do they know? It's all in God's hand. Now, we're all just here by the benevolent guidance of God, and so they don't do anything. There may be other reasons they don't do anything. Maybe they have no money. Maybe they have no resources that they can share with people who find themselves in trouble. Maybe the community is not cohesive enough, doesn't have good enough leadership. The leadership is just disengaged and doesn't care. So, your situation may vary, but that's your responsibility, is to figure this out. And you're going to have to. Because over the next few years, this just gets worse. Every year it gets worse. And even if it doesn't get worse every single year, every year it gets worse. On average. Let me show you some things. I usually do this. We usually do some science. So let's do some sciencey stuff. My book. Available at Amazon. It was 100 Days, an End of Civilization novel. It does incorporate a lot of these themes. I was thinking about global heating and climate collapse and how people cope with a polycrisis, including losing their access to fossil fuels, losing access to electricity, hospitalization, food supplies, right? A polycrisis where everything kind of collapses at the same time, which seems... That's weird. That's Hollywood. That's zombie apocalypse, horror porn, or whatever you want to call it. No, it isn't. Okay, I'll read the book, and you'll see that it's not. It is quite conceivable that if we get enough bad news piling on us, then this whole thing comes crashing down. And well, you're going to find out, right? Was I right? Was I wrong? You're going to find out. I already know. I think I'm right. And everyone else, you're going to find out. So let's take a look at what's going on in the world. How bad could it get? Well, here's some bad news for you. This is a map of the marine heat wave. I've done this before. You've seen this before. It bears looking at once in a while just to remind you how fucked you are, okay? This is the marine heat wave, and they talk all about the El Nino, and it's going to be a strong El Nino. It's going to be a super El Nino. It's going to be a Godzilla El Nino. It's going to be a unscripted El Nino. It's going to be a off-the-chart El Nino. It's going to be a historic El Nino. They're going to do all this stuff. They're not ever going to tell you that there's a marine heat wave going on top of all that. The El Nino thing, let me over here, grab my drawing tool, since we love to do this. The El Nino thing is this part right here. This is the part that they're talking about when they talk about El Nino. And that's fine. They can talk about that. That's a thing. It's a thing. It's really a thing. And it takes place in this region. And they talk about that. But just let me point out to you, the actual marine heat wave, if you want to have something to compare to, it's really all of this. This is where the action is. Okay. Oh, and while we're talking about that, look at this show going on over here. Okay. These yellow and white areas are fairly significant departures from normal. I should clarify. This is sea surface temperature anomalies. Any place that happens to be blue, like this little bit up here, means it's a little bit below average. Everything else that's red to orange to yellow is increasingly above average. So these yellow areas are actually way above average, very hot. Let's look. Look what's happening over here. Look what's happening over here. This is the Mediterranean Ocean and the ocean around the UK and off of Spain. Okay, you can see Spain here and France and also the islands of the UK. Marine heat wave. That's the thing, folk. That's actually happening. They're having a marine heat wave, and there are parts of the Mediterranean Sea that are something like 8 degrees C above normal, which is like freaky. It's just freaky. It's just a freak. It's so hot. And then this thing over here, again, I'll outline this again. This is the El Nino area that they actually look at scientifically. This is kind of doing the same thing. They expect it to be 5 degrees C above average. El Nino conditions start at 0.5 degrees C above average, 0.5, half a degree. A strong El Nino is, I think, like 1.5 degree. They're expecting 4 to 4.5, maybe to 5. This is going to be completely insane. Completely insane. And this business up here, but this whole picture, there's very few blue spots. There's very few spots in here that are colder than normal. They're either normal, which is the dark spots. The dark spots basically have no color and they're normal. Or they're mostly above normal and sometimes even catastrophically above normal. Now, I live over here in California. I'll put a little dot. This is where I live. And right now, there's a high pressure center over here. And they're like, heat dome. It's a heat dome. Let's call it Bob. Bob the heat dome. Okay, what that really means is that high pressure centers rotate clockwise, okay? The winds around a high pressure center locate clockwise. So when they come down this way and they dip in over the Gulf of Mexico, and then they come across this hot water here, the Gulf of California, and even the Pacific Ocean, okay? These winds, these circular winds, are carrying hot, moist air into California, which is unusual for us. We don't generally get these conditions. It's been really muggy and really hot, really hot. It's not even cooling down at night like it normally does. Normally our winds here in the Bay Area, our winds come in off the ocean like this, and the Pacific Ocean is quite cool. Even though there's a kind of a marine heat wave going on in the Pacific Ocean, it still is cool enough to provide us with cooling air at night. But right now, because of this big high pressure center over here, the dominant winds are not coming onshore. They're coming kind of halfway between onshore and offshore. They're coming down this way, and they're coming in over all this hot land and all this hot water, and they're bringing us monsoons. And we got a little bit of rain earlier this morning. Monsoon rain. Really weird for California. Certainly here in the Bay Area, really weird. We're far enough north, we shouldn't get anything like that. That's the setup, folks. That's the setup. Now, what's really going to happen over the next few years, and that's why we're here today, okay? What's really going to happen over the next few years is that all the heat associated with the equatorial region, which is this region here, the equator is actually right here. This is the actual equator. Goes through northern part of South America and the central part of Africa, and of course way over here in Indonesia, Borneo, the South Pacific. That's the equator. On either side of the equator is the tropics. Well, what's happening with all of this is that the tropics are moving north and south. We don't care too much what they do in the south because there's hardly anybody that lives down there. There's not many land masses, and the land masses are kind of small, like the tip of South America, the tip of Africa, Australia. Okay, these are not large land masses. But as the subtropics migrate north, bringing tropical conditions with them, then you're getting into very large and very wealthy land masses like the United States of America, Europe, North Africa, the Mediterranean region, so that'd be Greece, Italy, Turkey, and further north into Asia. So now we're talking about the Chinese and Eastern Europe. And we have been seeing massive impacts from a basic general migration north and south, but let's talk about the north, of the subtropics. And as the tropics and the subtropics move north, and it's going to change everything you think you thought you knew about weather. It's just going to pitch it into a cocktat. Okay, it's over. And this is now unavoidable. As global heating increases and continues, which it will do both, and those are different. Increasing is increasing. Continuing means you don't go back. So it increases and it continues, okay? We're heading for hothouse Earth. Now, people were talking about hothouse Earth 20 years ago when they were trying to convince people that global heating is a big deal. Hothouse Earth. Even the people who talked about hothouse Earth don't do that anymore. Because it's too scary. Nobody wants to talk about this. And you can easily find online analyses of how much the discussion of global heating has vanished from the public space. There are fewer journal articles. There are fewer papers being published. There are fewer scene and theme articles in the magazines and the papers. Lifestyle magazines carry less information about this now, and the interest in this is gradually disappearing because now it's real. It was fun to talk about when you could talk about it happening. 70 years from now, 80 years from now, 100 years from now, which was the talk when I was still in graduate school, and we first started running into this in the early 90s. Late 80s and early 90s, and the talk that 300 years from now we'll notice changes from global heating, and it's 30 years now further on for me, and it's already here, and nobody wants to talk about this anymore. So they're not going to talk about this anymore, but it's going to happen anyway. And what's going to happen is that the subtropics are going to make their way slowly north until you get to a point where places that used to have manageable heat waves will find themselves in tropical conditions, and the heat waves never go away. And the other thing that's happening, and you can see it in this map, because this is a map of the marine heat waves, the water gets hotter. And when the water gets hotter, there's more evaporation from the water. And when there's more evaporation from the water, there's more water in the air above these hot water masses. And when that warm, moist air starts to move around, you can get storms. And of course, you can get monsoons. And you can get torrential rains that come every day. That's how monsoons are. They happen every day, generally 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe earlier. And the moisture is just always there. And if you're in an area that has just suddenly acquired monsoons, like I guess we are now, because here we are, monsoon weather, muggy, hot, no airflow, clouds, rain, hot rain, not even cooling rain, just hot rain, monsoons. I've been in monsoons. I've lived in Bangkok, okay? Don't tell me about monsoons. I can tell you all about it. Yeah, this feels familiar. Yeah, it was a long time ago. But, you live through a couple of monsoon seasons. Even if you're just a little kid, you learn to understand that. And when I came back from Bangkok, I understood that. And I didn't have to deal with monsoons as long as I lived in California until now. And here we are. And it only gets worse. Now, here's what I think will happen over the next few years. Starting with 2026. This El Nino season, this El Nino event, is going to surface and release so much energy into the Earth system that it's going to set the Earth, that it's going to set the energy levels of the entire engine of the planet to a new level. We've seen this once before. It happened in 2023. 2023 was an El Nino event. I actually have, is this it? Yes, this is the El Nino chart. Let me show you. Okay, this is daily sea surface temperature. So from left to right, it goes from January 1st to December 31st, left to right. And from up to down, these are just temperatures. There's like a 6-degree range in temperature. And remember, the El Nino starts at 0.5 above normal. So we're looking at temperatures here. 2015, this heavy gray line, it got hot. It got really hot in 2015. That was a big El Nino. That was a barn barnstormer. We had a little one in 2023. It's still quite a bit above average, but it was small, and yet this El Nino 2023 was enough to basically alter the Earth engine, and it never went back. And people freaked completely out. People in the climate space freaked out completely. I saw this happening, and I said, we'll never understand what happened with 2023. And I've heard different explanations as to what happened. Oh, it was an El Nino. Well, yeah, but it was a kind of a puny one, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't compare with 2015. That's 2015. There's 2023. Yeah, it's okay, fine. It's elevated, but it was kind of putsy. And they're saying, well, but there was also a change in the aerosol masking effect, the AME, and there was a change in albedo, and there was a change a bunch of other. Okay, fine. So 2023 was a scary year for climatologists because something bad happened. And after 2023, it really had a hard time settling down. And then 2026 came along. And we are now in trouble. 2015, 2026 is heavy brown line, which is it's only getting us to middle of July, which what you expect. This is off the chart compared to everything else that's ever happened. Compared to all these other events, for this time of year, this one, 2026, is off the chart. It doesn't go off the top of the chart, okay, but it's out of the range of everything that's ever come before. And James Hansen, leading climatologist, now retired, but still he's got his chops and his team. And he was saying, I don't know if it was an official paper he published, but he was opining, suggesting that 2026 will be enough of a disruption that the Earth system will be launched into yet another anomalous energy state. No going back. It's like stair steps. You go along, and it seems like and then there's a big jump. And then you go along, you feel like you got a handle on things, then there's a big jump. And you go along, okay, and our normalcy bias is that you go along. And maybe, this year is a little warmer, but then next year could be a little colder. And we just kind of go along, right? We go along. It's a little up, a little down, a little up, a little down. Okay, but what we're seeing, what's actually happening in the system, is we're getting stair steps. It goes along, and then boom, something happens. And it goes along, and then boom, another thing happens. And it doesn't go back. And 2026 could be one of those. Could be like that. We could get kicked into a completely different set of energy imbalances that maybe would correct if given 3, 5, 6 years, but because global heating is continuous and it's always getting worse, then the opportunity for things to sort of re-equalize vanishes, because there's constant energy being pumped into the system, constantly, every single day, essentially. More energy is being pumped into the system. Every day that the sun shines on the earth, there's heat being accumulated. And you won't notice it every day. And then the seasons, winter is maybe a little cooler than summer, and you won't notice it. And you'll think, well, we just had a warm winter, but at least we had a winter. You won't notice. And then when spring comes along, boom, it's so hot you can't believe it. And so our normalcy bias says, well, it's always hot in the summer, and then it cools off in the winter. But your winter is never really as cool as it should be. And maybe your winters are never as cold as they used to be. And maybe your winters don't even snow. And maybe the snow never comes. And maybe you also don't get rain. And maybe it's hot enough that when it does get rain, the rain just evaporates. And so you're thinking, it's winter, it's cooler, it's 70 degrees, it's 60 degrees, but it should be 40. And you're not complaining that it's not 40 degrees in winter, because when it was cold, you had to wear a coat. And that was inconvenient. And when it was cold, there was ice on the sidewalks, and that was dangerous and inconvenient. Well, now we don't have ice on the sidewalks. Now I don't have to wear a coat, and I can wear, short sleeves and shorts and flip-flops, and it's dead of winter. And I like it this way. I could get used to this kind of a winter. What you don't realize is, because your chimp brain isn't working for you, this is the danger. This is dangerous. This is a danger sign, because that energy that's giving you a really pleasant winter, you can go to the beach in winter. You can, walk around in short sleeves in winter. That kind of thing, that's a signal. That's not mild weather that's so much better than the terrible winters we used to get. That's not mild winter. That's a signal. And then summer comes. And you have heat waves. One after the other after the other. Until you have to start naming them so that you can talk about them after they're gone. You can say, we've had, just like they do with hurricanes, we've had 6 named heat waves this year. Or whatever they're going to do, right? We've had 12 named heat waves this year. Last year we had 8, and the year before that we had 2, and this year we had 12. And they can talk about it that way and increase your awareness of what's happening to you. Will they do that? I don't know. We won't do that in the U.S. Absolutely not. Foursquare, no way we're going to do that in the U.S. We will never do that. We will never allow anybody to ever connect the dots on what's happening to them in this country. Never. 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 The current administration is, as fast as they can, removing data, destroying data collection systems, defunding projects that do analysis. The NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research, sounds important, doesn't it? They had a supercomputer for doing modeling, and they got shut down. As far as I know, Elon Musk got their computer, and he's training AI on it now. I don't know what happened to NCAR. They're gone. A couple weeks ago, a month ago, they were ready to pull all the ocean buoys out of the ocean that the scientists had gotten funded through the National Science Foundation, the NSF. And they got all these buoys put in. They're big buoys, they're the size of a car. And they got all these buoys put in around the ocean to collect data on currents and temperatures and all this stuff. Well, the Trump administration replaced the board of the NSF, National Science Foundation, with a bunch of his buddies who are all real estate people. My wife wants me to do something. And the board defunded the buoys, even though they'd been paid for. And they just didn't want them out there. They didn't want people collecting the data. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. So that's how it is. And that's how it is here in the United States. They don't want you to know. So you're not going to know. I mean, unless you come on here and you listen to me, let me tell you what's going on, you're not going to know. And then the YouTube algorithm will tell people you don't want to hear this. So you still won't know. This gets worse. Even if we don't have another El Nino in the next 5 years, we might. The marine heat wave doesn't go away. The omega blocks don't go away. The heat domes don't go away. We'll have to start naming our heat waves because they'll be happening so frequently. We'll have to name them to be able to talk about them and compare them to each other. There's no escape now. Well, you can escape. If you're rich, you can move somewhere else. You can move someplace where it's cooler. You can move someplace where they don't have these kinds of heat waves. Where would that be? I don't know. It's hard to find a place right now. Alaska? Japan? Japan's pretty far north, but Japan gets typhoons like you wouldn't believe. So it turns out that's not the best choice. Greenland? Yeah, okay, so the U.S. is about to steal Greenland from the Dutch, the Danes. And I guess you could go move to Greenland and live on the ice. And then you won't have to worry about the heat waves. That would work. And is that their plan? To take the ice island and move all their rich buddies there and set up a Trump Tower and a bunch of rich enclaves, and everyone lives in the shadow of the ice, so that the ice is always sending down cool breezes to keep you cool? Yeah, maybe. It's a plan. It's a strategy, right? So maybe you could move to Greenland along with the Trump family and go live in his Trump hotel on Greenland, and maybe that works. Yeah, if you have enough money, right? If you're a billionaire and you can afford his $1 million a month fee to live in his Trump Tower on Greenland, then I guess you can do that. That's a strategy. Not everybody's going to have that. And that's going to be plan A for a lot of people. That's not even going to be plan B. So what are you supposed to do? Well, okay, we're going to have mass fatality events. So maybe that's what happens. People get swept up in the mass fatality events, and that's their plan A. That's their plan A. Don't have a choice. Their only plan was to hope it didn't catch them. But it will, eventually. We're headed into hothouse Earth. And hothouse Earth is exactly what it implies. It's a hothouse. Go into a greenhouse someday. Go into a glass house and try and breathe. Just try to breathe, okay? It's 100% humidity. It's 95, 98 degrees, 100% humidity. You can barely breathe in these places. The next 5 years are going to tell the tale. And there's going to be massive campaigns for adaptation. Individuals will try to adapt. Communities might try to adapt. There will be no nations that really try to adapt. It's just going to be some communities who have a lot of political power, a lot of political pull, have money, and they will be able to talk about adaptation, and nobody else will. And over the next 5 years or so, we're going to see who it is that can adapt to this and who cannot. And those people who cannot, they die. That's how it is. By 2031. That seems a long time down the road, right? But remember, every year gets worse. And so it's not like in 2031, let's see, what day is that? It's not like in 2031, the can tips over. And everything changes. Everything's changing now, and every year it's going to get worse. And even if there's a year when it's a little better, the next year will be a lot worse, because that's how this works. Every year it gets hotter. Every year will be hotter than the year before, on average. And sometimes it'll be a lot hotter than the year before. And it will be so hot that people can't survive it, because they couldn't adapt. And we've got a few years now to figure that out, adaptation. Which is not just getting everybody an air conditioner, but also getting everybody the electricity they need to run that AC. And if you have to buy your own generator to run your AC when the power fails, that's another thing you have to buy. Plus fuel. And what does that mean? How are you going to do that? We got a few years to find out what happens. And then a lot of people die. And they'll be doing that this year, and they'll be doing that next year, and they'll be doing that the year after. And we'll kind of get used to large numbers of people dying. We'll get used to signs of, refrigerator trailers full of bodies, like we did with COVID. And we won't even report these things. It won't even be in the news. In fact, they'll pass laws to make it illegal to talk about bad things happening. You'll be a domestic terrorist if you talk about bad things. And they'll arrest you, and they'll throw you in a prison, and you have to justify why you said all those terrible things. Well, it happened. Yeah, but you're scaring people. Why were you doing that? It's against the law to scare people. Yeah, but it's true. But you don't have to talk about it. It scares people when you talk about it. So we can't talk about true things? No, don't talk about the truth. It's scary.
Someone's at the entryway doorbell.
Who's that?
I don't know. Time for you to get up.
Someone at the door. Don't die.
1 hour. It's almost 2 hours.